to be transparent about especially any large events that impact the community. So that it was a sore spot that there was a communication lapse. But what I will say is that, and what I said to DFSS then is that, you know, these housing, is a right that I think everybody should have. And it's also the entire city's responsibility to make sure that those who are the most vulnerable are taken care of. And so while I didn't like the way that we got here, although I think it was unintentional, I do support our responsibility as a ward to make sure that we um, you know, make sure that the neediest of our residents, are taken care of and are safe, especially in the middle of a pandemic. That being said, I also expect that there's accountability and, for tenants who are there, as well as I do expect that type of accountability for anyone who's living in our community. But I just wanted to kind of put that, in context before we had this discussion tonight about having Young Women's Leadership Academy be a congregant setting for homeless. I will leave it up to Ms. Riley to talk about some of the details and share some of those things with you. And then like I said, we'll leave it, we'll have questions and answers. Um, we'll spend the majority of our time with questions and answers. So Ms. Riley?
Thank you, Alderman King. Thank you, everybody, for having us here today with you. We truly appreciate the Fourth Ward and Alderman King. I have definitely been in contact with her office weekly. Just piggybacking off of what Alderman King stated about early on in the pandemic, just so you know a little information, DFSS, which we call it the Social Services Department of the City, Department of Family and Support Services, we fund approximately 3,304 shelter beds pre-COVID. With the decompression that we had to pull all populations out in order to adhere to the social distancing guidelines by the Chicago Department of Public Health, we needed to find spaces throughout the city in order to set up alternative shelter sites, is what we're calling them. Initially, we had 5 shelter sites. Currently, we have 2 shelter sites, alternate shelter sites. And we were setting them up in YMCAs, setting them up in Salvation Army centers, as well as schools. And again, it was a bumpy start, but we're here today just to kind of give you a preview. We were very lucky. We put out an RFP, a request for a proposal last summer, and asked for the different agencies in the homeless services arena to apply for the different, the 2 shelters, alternate shelter locations that we had, and Primo responded to that call. So what I wanted to do is share my screen. There's a presentation that I send the Alderman's office a weekly update since Primo have been operating the shelter. One of the things at our first community meeting that we had with you is that we were going to be transparent and open about what was happening at the shelter. So every week on Fridays, Alderman King, as well as Chief of Staff Prentice, receives weekly updates from me. Also, I just wanted to say that DFSS, we are definitely in this. We communicate with Troy weekly. I have a staff person that goes out like every other week if possible. And we are engaged in what happens with the boilers, with the elevators, with the engineering and so forth. So we are very happy to have them as a partner. And you will see in the presentation how their presence has made a difference in the lives of the women at the shelter. So I'm going to share my screen now.
All right, Ms. Riley, are you able to?
I think so. Let me know if you're able to see it.
Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, I'm on my work computer, so it may be a little slow.
Prince, you have the presentation. You can put it up, right?
I can. So if that makes it easier, Ms.
Okay,
Riley.
yeah, that would be fine. I did press the share screen, but now it seems like my computer is frozen.
Yeah, we'll put it up for you.
And I have it printed out too, because right now I can't get back to the Zoom call, looks like, but I have it in front of me, so I'll be able to.
Yeah,
let you
Prince,
know
can you
when
put it in slideshow mode?
I will do that.
Or
All right.
there you go. And Ms. Riley, just let us know when you want to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then my screen just pulled up, but okay, let me see if I can get back to your picture. Okay, is the first
Mm-hmm.
screen up? Okay, my computer is actually really slow, but like I said, I have it in front of me. So again, Prentice, if you can go to the second slide, which states the progress.
We're on it.
Okay, thank you. One of the things in the weekly updates, again, we wanted to be very transparent about what's going.
Hello?
Did we lose Ms. Riley?
Ms.
So
Riley?
I'll just jump in. Well, and let me know when we get Ms. Riley back. So you know, she's correct. They've been updating us with very detailed progress since the Primo Center has shown up. We've been getting weekly updates that are really detailed. As it says here, you know, the first week of the weekly updates.
Instances where.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
yeah, I think you took over the screen display.
Yeah, you guys shared your screen.
Oh. Okay, hold on. I
That's
think my
okay. Well,
computer is, I apologize about that.
Prentice, you want to take the screen back?
And now
then
it's-
Ms. Riley, now we can hear you. You
Yeah,
can-
take the screen back. Because it says Zoom webinar not responding, so I hope it doesn't kick me out.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, so.
Hey, we don't see it, Prentice.
Okay, hold on a second.
The joys of technology and Zoom.
Isn't it great? Okay, here we go. Can you see it now?
Cannot. I think you have to stop sharing her screen first. Here, you can stop her from sharing and then you can share.
Okay, let me stop that. Stop video. Okay, should have stopped her video.
I don't think it does.
And that is activities and sound, there's health.
We're trying to stop your screen for some reason.
Yeah, we couldn't
Okay.
hear you for a minute.
Let me, hold on, let me see if I can log out of Zoom and I'll be right back because my computer is really, hold on for a second.
Okay.
Okay, let me see. I can see the stop share now. Hold on, let me see. Okay,
thank you.
all right. Okay, I'm back. I apologize.
You see it now.
Okay. Oh, what is going on with this computer?
It's
Only
okay.
you see my screen now. Alderman King,
Yes,
you can see the screen now?
yes, I can see it. I
Okay,
just can't see Ms. Riley.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, so they've been giving weekly updates. The first week they had 8 incidents. You know, the week of January 11th, they were down to 1 incident per week. The number of activities and service provided after the first week was 1, and now after January 11th, there were 10 activities and services provided. Next screen, Prentice. Yeah. So the successes since Primo Center began managing the shelter on September 15th, I think Ms. Riley will be back, but they have housed a total of 47 residents.
Okay, I'm back.
And if somebody else wants to jump in from the Primo Center.
I'm back. Can you hear me? Okay, I apologize.
We're on screen 3 now.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
I
Go
apologize. I will never share my screen
Don't
on
worry
this
about
computer.
it. You should have been on our Zoom last night. You'd be feeling really good about your.
So some of the successes. So the Expedited Housing Initiative, I just want to give a little background about what that is. So with the pandemic, we received federal funding through the CARES Act, and this is funding specifically for housing. We decided to use it for housing for residents in our shelter system. So Primo Center was actually our first site who had their first engagement of this initiative on October 10th. Through this initiative, we call it Expedited because All Chicago, who's our agency who's leading this effort, they actually bring a team of people to the shelter. At that time, they show shelter residents, and these are the most vulnerable residents who may have medical vulnerabilities. At the time, there were families, smaller families at the shelter, and they actually met with them, showed them apartments, and walked them through applications. And since October 10th, when they had their, we call it a accelerated moving event, an AME, they have housed 44 residents. So we're very excited. They engaged, I think they still have maybe 15 to 20 more residents to house, but this is awesome. Usually the time from housing from assessment to housing can take up to 100 days, can take up to 150 days. But I received an email the day after their accelerated moving event saying that they had 3 residents had already been, the applications had already been accepted to housing. So we're very excited about that. I'm going to let Troy, if you can talk about the Illinois Domestic Violence Partnership. One of the things we appreciate about Primo, and they have been an agency of ours for some years, is the partnerships that they create. So I'm going to have him talk about the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline Partnership. Troy, you're on mute.
And so we got information through the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline that they were adding the Primo Center as a direct agency, so that if any clients who were coming to our shelters were fleeing domestic violence, that they would get access to the partnership without having to go through a third party. And as you know, when you have people come in to the shelter, they come for many different reasons. And those who are coming who are fleeing domestic violence, we take that information down. We have a weekly set time to meet with the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline. And we really kicked that into gear in the middle of November. And since that time, we have 3 residents who have been housed, and we have, since the time that we did this, I gave her this information, we have 2 more residents who are looking for places right now, permanent housing that they'll be able to go to that'll get them out of the shelter, specifically related to domestic violence.
Thank you. So again, we truly appreciate the partnership that Primo connects with other agencies. The next thing I wanted to highlight, so the city of Chicago is providing security for the shelter. So that's one thing we knew that will be very important for the safety of not only the residents, but the staff there. But Primo, through their contract, has installed the internet through Comcast, as well as ADT security cameras. So we are very excited to hear about that. Also, they've gotten different donations of furniture from companies. And in regards to healthcare, so CDP, a lot has gone on throughout this pandemic. The Chicago Department of Public Health put out an RFP for lead coordinating organizations. And Lawndale Christian Health is one of those lead coordinating organizations, but Primo actually had a partnership with them prior to. So through Lawndale's shelter-based service teams initiative through CDPH, as well as that partnership with Primo, they are providing services 2 days a week. And from our conversations with Troy, this has been one of the reasons why the calls to the ambulance and the police has stopped, because people, instead of saying, oh, my nose is running, they can say, I'll just wait for the doctor or the nurse to get here and to see me, or the healthcare provider. They're now having mental health services groups as well as therapy groups. So again, we're very pleased at all the activities and services they provided. Their staff has now been trained in giving the COVID test. Also, Lawndale has provided flu shots during the November, December to the shelter staff as well as the residents. And last week, they received their first COVID vaccine shot. One of the things the city is doing in Tier 1B, we're prioritizing the homeless community because they are very vulnerable. But because the shelter staff works with the homeless community, those shelter staff are offered the shot. It's not mandatory, just so you know. But we are going to, through Lawndale and Heartland Alliance Health, they are hitting all of the shelters in the city. Next slide, please. A few of the partnerships, and I can, Troy, after I talk a little bit about these, if you want to say anything about how you develop the partnerships, we're very pleased that they have partnered with these different agencies. The Christopher Watts Kindness Campaign, I swear they are giving them food every week or every 2 weeks at the shelter. They've partnered with Chicago City Key, which is open to everybody. This is an official city ID that is linked to your Venture card as well as your library card. So City Key has been on site. Reach Leadership for Girls, Get PPE Chicago, Pretty Girls Pray. They partnered with or applied for a program through Banana Republic, and they got donations of a lot of women's clothes and accessories, and they had a great meatloaf dinner from Gibson Steakhouse. So these are just some of the overarching things that we have been very happy to see through Primo and working with them. So Troy, did you want to say anything about the partnerships you've created in the community and with these organizations?
Yeah, the thing that is fantastic about it is that Pretty Girls Pray, the Reach Leadership for Girls, that they heard there was a women's shelter, and they reached out and wanted to do things and give back. And they've done coat drives, they've done dinners, they've done empowerment lunches and things like that that have helped build the self-esteem of some of the women. Shelley can talk about if she wants to. I don't know if she does. She was the one that got the information that Gibson's wanted to deliver meals, and they say, hey, we've got 300 meals to deliver. What's the great place? Well, we have 200 women here, so it works out, and the women are grateful, and they're fantastic, and they're appreciative. When we talk about Christopher Watts' kindness campaign, he and I developed a relationship at the other site that we had, and he said, I definitely want to come in and be a part of what's going on, and he has connections throughout the city that he introduces us to, and they provide coats, they provide clothes, they provide boots, they provide meals for us, and we're just excited about it. These relationships. We also have a pending partnership with Reverend Meeks with the Salem Baptist Church. They want to come in if we're remain at the site long term or a little bit longer. They want to come in and do a whole computer room for us, and I've just got other people waiting in the wings to figure out how we can move forward with these partnerships and how we can best serve the ladies that we have on the site.
Again, this short period of time, Family and Support Service, we're very happy that Primo Center responded to the call and applied through the RFP. They have been a great partner over the years with us. And again, we appreciate Alderman King, your communication and just your openness to this. We apologize again for the rocky start, but we wanted to share with your community some of the things that was going on in the shelter. Again, safety is very important to us. So security is doing rounds inside the shelter as well as outside. Safety in regards to wearing masks and washing hands. Lawndale actually installed some standing hand washing stations, not hand washing stations, hand sanitary stations on each floor in the hallways. So we're just very, we just wanted to provide you with this update of what was going on. So.
Yeah, in addition to that, we have air purifier machines on every level in the common areas that Lawndale has provided with us. And they're going to be out next week to install some plexiglass dividers in certain areas just to make sure that we're staying ahead of the COVID thing. And I'm pleased that for us being a congregate setting, that the number of actual positive COVID cases that we had have been very minimal, considering the number of clients that we have on a daily basis.
And when there are COVID positive clients, the city is funding an isolation facility at a safe haven, their property on California and Roosevelt. And that isolation facility is open to the public if anybody needs isolation. So the resident doesn't stay in the shelter during the isolation period. They are transported there for treatment, and they have rush nurses on staff there. And Alderman and Prentice, I think that's it for us.
Hey, Prentice, you want to take down the, yeah. Thank you. So depending on how many questions we have, there are some that came up in the chat. And so we will try and address those first. And then I can also allow people, if they raise their hand, if they want to ask a question live, I can allow you guys to talk. I usually like kind of more interaction and not just reading questions, just in case there's a follow-up to a particular question. But let's start with some of the questions in the chat, and then if folks want to ask a question live, we'll do that, including our panelists. So Ms. Cropper, why don't we start with you while I look for other
Alderman, I have 3 questions. I have 3 questions we can start off with, one from the same person, and I think this can be addressed pretty quickly. And it's from Miss Lucinda Jackson. She asked, what ages are the young ladies? Who determines which girls are allowed in? And how long can they stay?
I can talk about the 311 process, Troy, in regards to that shelter placement. So through the City of Chicago's 311 service, the people seeking shelter call 311, and that service request is sent to Salvation Army, who's now managing the transportation to shelter, and they also manage our shelter bed availability. So they are in contact with every shelter that we fund in the city and other agencies as well, and other shelters as well. They would call over to Young Women's Leadership and Primo and ask them if there's a bed available. So in our shelter system, the programs, such as the program that Troy is supervising, is for women 18 and older. So they can be as young as 18. We do have some youth programs that may accept youth ages 14 and up, but for our adult congregate shelters is 18 and up. And how long they can stay. The goal of shelter is not for clients to stay in shelter, but to give them housing and give them to resources to get to housing and stay in housing. So it just depends on how long the client is willing to work through that process of gaining stability. Troy, if you want to say anything else.
Yeah, I agree. The Primo motto is, it takes different varying stages of work to get people to not be homeless again. And it means that some people, it's a quick thing. It's about mediation with family, giving them the skills they need to participate or either be good neighbors, things like that. It may take 30 to 60 days. Some of them, it could take, 3 to 6 months, or it depends. We won't put a limit on what's necessary in order to give somebody the skills that's necessary in order to get them to be stably housed. What we do find is that sometimes people come in, and when you rush to put them out back into housing, they have a tendency to come back. So we are real big on building skills that are going to sustain permanent or supportive housing, or just stabilized housing away from the shelter system.
Great. Next question, Prentice, or Ms. Cropper, you want to ask your question and then we'll go to the next question.
Sure. I'm not sure who this is addressed to, but what was the plan when the shelter was set up? How long was the plan for them to stay there? And now what is your assessment of the longevity, and what conditions need to exist for you to stay or leave? And whose decision is that?
So the shelter, through a zoning or an ordinance, not a zoning, an ordinance that was passed in September, gave us till March 1st. So we are actually in contingency plan mode, finding locations, alternate shelter locations. If we, and deciding on if we stay, I believe it's up to Alderman King having that conversation with you, the community, and any other conversations we'll have to, but we are in contingency mode in regards to finding alternate locations if needed. But March 1st is that date that's in the ordinance.
Yeah. And
That's like in a couple of weeks. Are you
Yes,
actually planning?
we've been working on this. No, we've known about the ordinance and since September. So this is not something we just started.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So let me follow up on that, Ms. Cropper. So when we found out, that they were first coming in, I made sure that we put in the ordinance, I'll just be honest, that we would have until March. And I based that on, so they had moved the congregate center from another location and they had been there about that same amount of time. But I also wanted to I wanted to assess it and get feedback from the community. And this is partly what that is, to see how things were going before we made a longer term commitment. But I've always said that our goal was to be able to extend it and, to make sure, again, that our most vulnerable population was taken care of. And so that's kind of where we are. Maybe Ms. Riley, you can speak to what the goal is of
Yes.
having this congregate setting, ideally for you, meaning, I know what the ordinance says until March, but I think your plan was to go until when, if you could, and can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so we follow the guidance from the Chicago Department of Public Health. So initially they were thinking with the pandemic, September of last year. Now, because, it seems like it's March, but again, it depends on the vaccine rollout and how that goes in Chicago with herd immunity and so forth. But right now, we've actually extended our shelters who were not 24/7 until the end of June. So that would be our first marking, the end of June. The benefit of having the ladies at Young Women's is because they're already there, and moving is a big task, and you'll be shifting them from a place where, if some of them have been there for a couple months, a familiarity, and moving them to another location. So that's, and again, Primo, we would extend their contract. They're on the same kind of contract. So, and they understand that. But right now, our shelter system is not going to be recompressed per the Chicago Department of Public Health. We cannot bring everybody back into the regular bed system.
Yeah. Did you have a follow-up, Ms. Cropper, or was everything answered?
No, I'm good for now, thanks.
Okay, Thank
Thank you
you.
for your question. Thank you.
Yeah. So I see a couple more questions in the chat. One is, how many, you may have answered this and I may have missed it. How many total women are served? Is there a revolving population?
We have 200 beds. At this point, all of the beds were filled except for 2 as of 3 o'clock. Now that may have changed because we are open 24 hours. We do accept women whenever they are needed to be accepted. And our population is revolving. Like we talked about earlier, there are women who have been moved into permanent supportive housing through the AMI. There are women who have self-resolved. There are people who we've sent back home to different states to be back with family. And so when those ladies roll out, then a new set of ladies roll in. And particularly now when the weather is really inclement like this, we have our highest population days where everybody's coming in. It's not safe to be outside. It's not safe to be on the bus. It's not safe to ride the train. It's too cold to be in encampments. So the population remains steady, but it does revolve, yes.
Right. So couple other questions that I see in the, I'm going to try and go to some easier. How was this location chosen? What other wards have shelters?
Yes. So the location was chosen because we worked with our city partners. CPS had 2 schools that we're now in, one on the south side, one in further south, and one in Bronzeville. So we actually did site visits to every site. We probably visited 4 or 5 CPS schools. They gave us the schools that were actually that can operate as something, that it didn't need a lot of work, that we can come up with a solution in regards to putting beds in or cots. So that's how it was selected. Currently in the city of Chicago, we have over 28 shelters throughout the city, on the north side, on the west side, and the south side. So we didn't choose it saying, oh, we want a shelter in Bronzeville, but we chose it because that was the available space at the time. And in regards to funding, as I stated before, we were in YMCAs and at the Salvation Army Center. It was just really expensive to be at those locations. And then over time, so one of the programs who was managing, it was a youth program managing a program at one of the YMCAs, decided to go back to their shelter program. So we've really evolved in this and learned a lot. So, but that's how the buildings were chosen.
Okay. Are local residents able to drop off donations there? If so, what kind of items are needed?
If they're going to drop off donations, that we would definitely appreciate it. But the main thing that we would be looking for would be hygiene supplies, things like that the ladies would need, toothpaste, toothbrushes. We never can run out of those type of things. We never can run out of things as simple as towels and or twin size sheets. It's always a revolving door with those type of items. So those would be appreciated. We do very seldomly now accept clothes because we did have somebody drop off a donation, unfortunately, of bags that were filled with bed bugs, and it just really set us back because we had to get rid of a lot of stuff that was good prior to then, and then we had to get treatment and things like that. So it's that's one of the things. But hygiene supplies would definitely be at the top of the list of things that we could always use at the shelter, and they could just drop them off at any time.
Great. What is the best way for other nonprofits to partner in providing services to help the women in Primo's location or other locations?
I think that's a Shelley question. Shelley, are you on still?
In terms of other nonprofits partnering with us, we definitely welcome partnerships. They can actually contact me directly. I can give my email now on our website. They can also go to primocenter.org and contact information is there. But we are really very much dependent on partnerships. One that I wanted to spotlight earlier is the partnership that is getting ready to get underway with the Chicago alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And we do partner with a lot of the fraternities and sororities, churches, and other social organizations and affinity groups through churches. So please, reach out to me. I can put my information in the chat as well. And that's something, that we, definitely encourage in the community. We've been in, the Chicagoland community for almost 43 years. And, we are so, we don't do our work without partners. So I'll put my information in and please feel free to contact me.
Okay. So there've been a couple of questions about the nature of the incident. Someone put in the Q&A, Alderman King should check with the First District Police for accurate numbers of calls to the shelter. Early on, I was checking, but I would be curious if that person, do they know of other incidents that we should be concerned about? Feel free to respond.
And just so everybody know, on the weekly updates that I send to the commissioner, the commander, Seamus of that district is also on those weekly updates.
Yeah, it's
So he's been getting.
I know who you're talking about.
Okay, Captain Seamus.
He's really good, but
he gets those weekly updates. So we're connected with the Chicago Police Department in these efforts as well.
okay. And what is the nature of those incidents?
So I think when we talk about incidents, there are generally two types of incidents that occur that the police can be involved in. Some of those are incidents where the clients have called the police and we were not aware that the police were called. We look up and see, we go to the door and we're letting the police in and they say, we got a call from XYZ 123. And sometimes it has been because the person was hallucinating and thought that somebody was in the shelter after them. Other times people have called and said that there were people hiding in closets and under the beds. We have reduced the number of calls that we made to the police. They called the police prior to us coming for every outburst. Our staff are skilled and trained on dealing with those type of things. And unless somebody is just overly aggressive, then we won't call the police on a weekly day-to-day basis. We have had incidents of fighting. We have had incidents where people were overly aggressive. The most recent thing, a lady threatened to have a knife, and she was outside after we asked her to leave. Our security personnel escorted her out. She was seen in the parking lot trying to stab some tires and things like that. Those incidents don't happen often, but it's the probability that they could. And so basically, when the police come for us, it's because somebody is so disruptive that we can't coach them into a state of calm. And oftentimes the police will leave with them, taking them to seek mental health treatment and or other services like that. Is that they're so far gone that we can't engage them at all.
As a follow-up, I think this is an appropriate question. How much is mental health an issue at the shelter?
It's a big issue, which is why we have our clinical director who's on the line to oversee mental health services in the center. We have two clinicians on site every day, and we have two clinical case managers on site. We train our staff in harm reduction. We train our staff in a lot of different models as far as how to help the ladies develop coping skills, how to recognize mental illness. We do try to take care that if we need to call the police, we do ask for an officer who's trained and who's been trained through the mental health training that the police officers go through so that they know exactly what they're walking through walking to, and the response has been really, really good. The thing with homelessness is mental health it shows itself in many different ways. So there's depression, there's PTSD. If you know you've been put out of your house and you've been evicted, that's a traumatizing event. We have to deal with that. We have to deal with the ladies who have been abused. We have to deal with those who have bipolar and schizophrenia. We do have a psychiatrist that's a part of our team as well, who helps monitor that. And so I think that we have made tremendous strides in, along with just the Lawndale health part. The ambulance is not called as much. Sometimes residents will call and say, and it's particularly the newer residents who come in who don't know. They may have come in and it's, I'm not feeling well. And then we have, you know, when people have seizures and stuff like that, we are not medical practitioners, so we want them to get checked out more so than not. But the number of calls, and I made this very bold statement, Alderman King, when we first met, that we were going to reduce the number of calls. We were going to reduce the number of incidents. And I am proud to say that we have done that. And as we continue to stake our claim at this facility, it's only going to get better. It is only going to get better.
No, I appreciate that. Do you have a sense, just to follow up, because I think mental health is a huge issue that, you know, as a city, we need to address as well, what the percentage of clients have some kind of mental health needs?
Alderman, I can share with you our 2020 point in time count.
Mhm.
Actually, let me see if I can look up the link and I can put it in the chat. But
Okay.
on that, during our point in time count, we do surveys where we ask a certain percentage of the population about mental health issues. So you'll be able to find that on that as well. So I don't have a percentage of, you know, but in every population, whether it's youth, families, you know, a head of household, singles, women and men, you have it in every population, but I'll get that information.
Oh, sure. I
Mhm.
certainly aware of that. But you know, again, it's an issue across,
Mhm.
you know, all walks of life. But you know, folks who are faced with challenges, it's just exacerbating that issue, right? And so I just was curious about that. I'm going to ask the next question, but I also just want to hear from constituents, especially ones who live adjacent and close by. Have they noticed any incidents recently? I'd love to hear about those in the chat if you have. Here's a question. Is it reasonable to assume that when that post-COVID, this shelter will be closed? And by definition, is this just a COVID-specific shelter?
Yes, that is very reasonable to assume. We opened these shelters because of COVID and we had to decompress the shelter system. Our goal is to recompress the shelter system and bring everybody back together. Yes.
Great. Another question, is there or can there be access to Alcoholics and Narcotics Anonymous on premises or on premises meetings? I'm sorry.
We do have, I'm sorry, I got kicked off. I am back. We do have a certified addiction and drug counselor as one of our practitioners on site every day, who does groups and who sees individuals individually to discuss their addiction and drug situations.
Okay. There was another question earlier in the chat, and I told them I would answer it because it was a larger.
Housing opportunity, the way we can expand housing and supportive housing for those that need it.
Yeah, hold on one second. I'm getting to it. Can we use this opportunity to find a way to expand supportive housing for those who need it? I
So-
understand that the use of the building provided safer temporary shelter, and I think we should push for more money to help house people and have fewer homeless and in such a precarious situation.
And the answer to that is that's the goal of shelter, to have permanent housing. I'm not sure if that question was to, like, once this is over, it's not an alternate shelter site, to turn that property into supportive housing. I'm not sure if that is it, but we are always looking for partners that will provide affordable and safe housing for shelters.
Right. So I think it was, and that's why I wanted to save it, because it's a larger, although I see some other questions and we can think about it, but I think they were saying, let's use this opportunity to have that larger conversation. What do we do, with folks who have housing insecurities? How are we, trying to mitigate that long term? Like you said, your goal is to get people into permanent housing. And I think you've done a tremendous job with the help of and partnership of the Primo Center in doing so. But I think that's where they were going with that particular question. But while we're thinking of that, because I would like to spend some time thinking about that larger issue. There's some questions from local folks that I want to get to in terms of perhaps some disturbances. Let's see. I live 2 blocks from the shelter, and until the snow, have seen 2 women who presented as mental health challenge, who presented themselves with mental health challenges, walking around. What can be done about that? Or is that just, can someone speak to that?
We try to provide programming throughout the day for all of our ladies. They can choose whether or not they want to participate. Sometimes sometimes you need to be by yourself, and in order to be by yourself, you go for a walk. And if that's that coping skill, then that's something that we encourage. Other than that, the ladies, because there is no city mandated lockdown, we don't enforce them to stay inside. We encourage it, but when we know about it, we engage them. I can say that some of the people that we had early on who had the more significant mental health issues, who I knew would like to go outside and walk around and could be seen talking to themselves, they were partnered with some other agencies like Thresholds and Trilogy, and they have been moved on. The problem with that is when somebody move out, you get somebody new and you don't know what you're dealing with. So that could be something that we look at, and we have team meetings weekly. I'm gonna make this short. We have team meetings weekly to talk about those people who are more severe mentally ill, and we try to get them engaged with places and people that can move them rather quickly and who can provide them with services that we can't, because there's some people just beyond the scope of what we're able to deal with, and we recognize that, and we make referrals to move them on to places that can deal with them.
One of the other things that I wanted to add about what we're doing at Young Women's Leadership is that all of our staff, including the security, we're in the process of training them as well. But we at Primo Center have a trauma-informed care approach to how we deal with our clients. So our house managers, the therapeutic team that we have there, our case managers, Ms. Rose, who handles our food service, everyone there has been trained on trauma-informed care. And so we recognize that some of the behaviors that our residents are exhibiting are due to trauma that they've experienced prior to coming to the shelter. And so we take that very, very seriously. Our maintenance team has been trained to recognize that just their presence, or the smell of their cologne or something like that, or their perfume may trigger. And so we are not punitive. We try to provide the mental health support that they need in order to help them work through those issues, and also to provide them with the skills so the next time, whether it's there at the Young Women's Leadership site, or if their neighbor, once they are permanently housed, presents with those same issues that cause them to trigger, that they'll be prepared to handle it in a more pro-social way. So that is what we're doing at Young Women's.
Great. And just off the top of my head, I would think that walks will be more prevalent as the weather gets warmer. And so and there's nothing wrong with walks, but will there be a greater challenge to the community, both internally and externally, as the weather gets better, and how will you mitigate kind of those challenges, and what do you anticipate? Can you share that with us?
Well, yes, we do have a twofold plan. One is that we continually, we've posted the signs from DFSS and the city of Chicago that talks about what a good neighbor is. So we spend a lot of time educating the ladies on what that is, and we'll continue to do that. We also are looking towards setting up different areas inside of the building where we have TV rooms and TV stations and hosting movies and things like that, so that there's structure throughout the day. In addition to that, in the back area, there's the area that's completely covered. We would like to put a courtyard back there so that the ladies can have someplace to go. They can soak up the sun. They're not hanging out up front. Most of the time they go outside because they want to smoke a cigarette. But this is an area that you can't not see from King Drive. You can't see it from the IBEW. You can't see it from the front because it's closed off, but will be a beautiful courtyard that we will be able to put together so that the ladies can have someplace to go if they need to get out of the building, that they won't have to roam aimlessly around the neighborhood or walk down to the park per se, but that we can contain and we can monitor. We do have security cameras back there already, so we can see it. I watch the security cameras from my home phone all the time, just so that I'm aware of what's going on. And we have a lot of people that want to engage with them as well. Christopher Watts, Pretty Girls Pray. They want to do things outside in the courtyard if we're able to get it, so that we could give them something to do rather than try to figure out what they want to do on their own.
Great. I want to take the time to acknowledge just some comments that are positive as well. This is a very open and transparent conversation. We are going to talk about challenges, but we also, if we hear positive feedback, want to share that as well. A neighbor says, I can see the shelter from my window and notice the activity early on, but not so much at this time. So your efforts to address the concerns are working. Thank you. Another one says, really grateful for y'all. You're doing incredibly hard work, during incredible hard times. You're seen and deeply appreciated. I'll email Shelley specifically to see what I can offer as both a Bronzeville and Fourth Ward resident and a nonprofit leader. She had to jump off, so she just wanted to say be well and stay safe and healthy. Thank you, Alderman King. I know you're a strong lead in the Council on Affordable Housing and know we need more help from the feds to increase those resources. Definitely do. From the feds, from the city, from the state, from everyone. We'll continue to push for those. And then I would like to also, our panelists that are up here, if there are questions that have come up, because I think I have exhausted all of the questions that are here. Let me know if I missed one, if somebody has one. Prentice, if you've seen one that I've skipped, or if somebody else. But please, if you're still on and there's some outstanding questions that you did not hear answered, or concerns or positive accolades, all of those, we're open to have that discussion here. So I will wait for a little bit, but again, also our panelists, if you guys have Other questions? Oh, there's another question that popped up. Thank you all so much for your work. It is so valuable and good to know that we do have a place for women to go and get compassionate and skillful support. Good.
Alderman King, I did get a private message that's asked me to talk about the security staffing that we have
Okay,
outside.
please.
And so we do have 3 security officers, sometimes 4 on at all times. And of those officers, it is mandatory that they do hourly rounds outside as well, so that they're just walking around the entire building from one end to the next, in addition to being able to see the cameras, so that if people are driving by or walking by, they'll see that there is a security presence as well. And they've been doing an excellent job of maintaining the safety of the residents inside and outside. And they will ask the ladies, okay, you know, you're not supposed to be congregating outside. And the ladies have been very respectful for the most part to us, saying that we want to make a good impression on our neighbors. And so they get it. But we do have security 24 hours, 7 days a week inside, and they do rounds outside.
Great, thank you. Ms. Cropper, I see your hands up, and then Mr. Bryant, did you have it up? Do you want to go after Ms. Cropper? Okay,
I want to just say how much I appreciate this meeting, because I live two blocks and I live in a townhome. So they're mostly high rises. So we can see very personally, and this has been very helpful. What I want to say to Mr. Moore Murray is that I would appreciate if you would take back to the city or whomever it is you represent and tell them that we are a giving community. And I'm glad that we found things that we can do to support these women. I think it's so important that they know there's a community that cares. But we were really offended by the way it happened. And if you could just let the powers that be know that this is a community that is very receptive to those kinds of things, would have loved to have known so we could have embraced them with a different spirit, but do not want to repeat this experience again, no matter how charitable or emergency an experience it might be. Now that we've been through this, I don't want Alderman King to be the only one to say that she was unhappy. She has a community behind her, and we want you to take that back and tell them, don't do this again, please.
Well, I just want to be,
appreciate that.
yes,
Go ahead,
absolutely.
Mr. Murray, I'm sorry, Moore Murray.
Want to be very, very open with just the level of notes that I am taking. For me, that is the largest takeaway. To tell you a bit about my background, I used to work with YMCA SROs for people who were formerly homeless or at risk of homelessness. And one of my experiences was dealing with communities that were not, as receptive as what I'm getting from the community right now, not as welcoming and not as open-hearted to folks who are going through hard times. And I'm also hearing that, not being informed and not being consulted and engaged before something like this happened really, really hit a nerve. And to me, it's extremely understandable that it would have that type of impact. So that's my largest takeaway, and that's going to be the thing that dominates my report back. So, absolutely, thank you for that, and it's a pleasure being around folks who, even with the concerns and everything else, the focus is, how to best, be servants and be neighbors and be a community in this situation, and not, how can we isolate ourselves from helping others. So greatly appreciate it. I see you all. It's inspiring to me. So, thank you for letting me be in this space, and I will absolutely take that back.
Thank you. Mr. Bryant?
Hi, good evening. I had 2 questions. I heard about mental health care being available. What about basic medical care for those that come to the facility? How is that accessed, or is it provided at all?
Yes, we talked about Lawndale Community Health Center. They are actually on site with 2 licensed practitioners every Monday and every Wednesday. This is one of the reasons why we cut down on some ambulance calls, because we can say, hey, if you're feeling a little tired, you're feeling a little stressed out, or you're in pain, the doctor will be here tomorrow. And they're in our building twice a week, every Monday and every Wednesday, and they're available for consultations as well. If we have somebody that we think they need to talk to, just the doctor or whatever, we have somebody available to us to do that. And it's made a tremendous difference in the level of care that the ladies feel that they're getting.
Okay, thank you. And out, I know you're 24/7, so after hours, so to speak, security would be on site, but is anyone else on site?
Yes, we have at least 3 to 4 staff on site at all times, all shifts. There are people on site in addition to security. Security, even though we're trying to get them to understand a lot of things, what it is we do, while somebody may be screaming and yelling, security may see that as a threat. We see it as an opportunity to build a skill. We see it as an opportunity to teach and to train. So we take the lead in situations like that. And if it gets to be too dangerous, then they'll step in and handle the situation. But we have quite a few people there at all times, including clinicians there on the weekend as well.
Thank you.
I think another resource would be, and you may have done it in the chat, perhaps to give a contact and a number that folks in the community, because, mental challenges are, challenges. And so if perhaps, we see somebody in the community who we may think, has having a mental episode, instead of calling the police, perhaps we can call someone from, the Young Women's Leadership site, so that, we can help them deal with that. I wouldn't want anybody to put themselves in harm's way, but I think, that's an avenue also as well, that we can think about. And also, do you have, I think you have curfew, right? Or what's that like? I don't know if curfew is a word to use for.
We do have a curfew. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, our curfew is 9 p.m. And we actually lock the doors at 10 p.m.
And is that the same in the spring, summer months as it is in the winter, or is it different? Okay.
It'll be the same. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there is a contact number that people can reach out to somebody in the chat.
Yes, I'll add it.
But yeah, whether they have a concern or whether, they're trying to be helpful or drop off, goods. I think that would be good for people to have kind of a direct contact. So, well, I think we're coming to the end. I don't see any more questions in the chat. If anyone else on the panel has something to add or would like to close with a comment, I'd be happy to entertain that. Yes, I think I saw a hand from Ms.
You did. I couldn't find that hand wave thing. I'm sorry.
That's okay, I recognize that wave.
I just wanted to say on behalf of South Commons, although we weren't aware it was coming, the board has not heard any direct concerns as of yet. We'll let you know as I guess as the weather breaks or whatever. But it sounds like you guys did all your work, and you've done your research. You know what you're doing. It sounds like you know your business and you're accountable to it. So if there's things we can do as a community, please reach out. I sent a message to Ms. Cooper about a partnership. Maybe she can join and get some food over there and see how that could work. But if there's a resource we could be to you, just let us know. So thank you.
Right. Any other closing comments or questions?
I wanted to say, this is Christine from Family and Support Services. Again, thank you very much to all of you, all of the community members. Again, this was not something we did not want to come in like we did, and we have learned our lesson. So now, even in our contingency planning, we are contacting aldermen and having conversations But again, we apologize. This is not how we wanted to start off. We are very grateful for all of you for this opportunity to continue to stay there, because we are not always welcome in communities. Even pre-pandemic, a lot of communities don't want homeless shelters in their community. So we're very grateful. And also, I mentioned before, very grateful for Primo Center and the work that they have done, because it has really made a difference in the lives of these women.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback off of that as well. The Primo Center has been an excellent addition. And just want to nod, give you guys a nod, not only for your care, but your accountability. I mean, I think that that's the important thing. When we first had these conversations, we were very open, but my next response was, well, let me talk to my community, because, I'm just one person who represents a lot of people. But I also knew that they would be welcoming. But they're as welcoming as they are, they want accountability. And I think that that's something that everybody should expect, no matter who you are, right? And so I don't think it would be any different in this case. So I just want, to say that for me, it's been a education, but a warming opportunity, I think, that we have in our community. And just appreciate you. I appreciate my constituents for always having hard questions, but being equally as compassionate as their hard questions. And so I think this has been a really good dialogue. One that we should have had on the front end, but that's okay. I think we are all better off for it. And just want to, say thank you to all of you for the work that you do. It's really God's work. The one last thing I want to leave with you all is policy that we're working on with a committee with the mayor's office as well, which I think is really important. I don't know if you've heard of like mental health first responders. We're really working on that because nationally, the calls that go to police, they're saying over 50% of the calls are for nonviolent, either mental health or social services. And so in an instance, Mr. Colbert, you mentioned, sometimes you have to call the police at a certain time, but wouldn't it be wonderful if you could have a mental health response team that would answer those? So I think that's something that we're working on. And we hope, to roll out by the end of this year in a pilot form. But that's just something I wanted to mention because I think it goes kind of hand in hand with this conversation. So again, thank you to everybody here. And Mr. Colbert, I don't know if I cut you off when you were about to talk, but if so, please.
No, I two things I want to say is one is that I live 6 minutes from, I am a Fourth Ward person. So I'm glad to be, yes, I live in the community as well. And on behalf of Primo Center, we are grateful for just this opportunity to share what it is that we're passionate about. I'm sure I speak for Christine and for Shelley and for everybody that's represented on the panel that this is our desire to help end homelessness one person at a time, one case at a time, one day at a time. And thank you all for trusting us and giving us the opportunity to do it at your site in our community with such a very difficult population. We appreciate you for giving us the opportunity to do so. So thank you all as well.
All right.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
The wrap. Everybody, thank you all for coming. Appreciate you. And stay safe and warm, especially tonight. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Take care, everyone.